Fine, okay. So welcome everybody, and I'm very pleased to say that Andy Hewitt has agreed to talk us through his setup this evening. Andy, do you want people to interrupt you, or would you prefer them to put any questions in the chat? Which is best for you?
I'm happy for interruptions because I prefer that. I think if everybody else is happy with that.
Okay.
Yes.
But equally, if you feel that it works better the other way, I don't mind.
We'll see how it goes. It's how you feel that you'd like to do it. That's fine. In that case, we'll leave our microphones switched on and try to keep quiet in the background unless you want have a question to ask. So with that said, we better push on. So Andy, if you'd like to, have you got control of the screen? Can you take over the screen?
So it's just said host disabled participant screen sharing.
Hang on. Try now.
Okay, yeah, that seems to have worked.
Fantastic.
Okay, so I just need to. So I'm going to try and do this as quickly as possible because obviously Jason needs to get away.
Don't rush it, Andy. I mean, it's a bit past past. I've no problem with that. It's just if I say past, it'll probably be 8, and if I say 8, it'll probably be 8:30. Okay.
We are recording the meeting, so people can come back to it if they want to.
Oh, that's super.
Okay. So I'll crack on and just take you through my journey so far with astronomy in general and astrophotography in particular. It dates back to 1982 when I was a kid and my dad bought us our first telescope that I shared with my 2 older brothers. It resides in a loft now in my dad's house, and I'm hoping to get it working again so he and I can have a few nights under the stars in his back garden. So I don't know whether anybody else is familiar with that model of scope, but it's a good good scope for viewing the moon and maybe Jupiter as well.
Yes, I've actually got the next one up from that in my garage.
Brilliant.
Yes, was it the 660 or something like that? They're a really nice set of scopes and starting to become quite sought after now.
Right, really. Unfortunately, it fell over. Nobody seems to know how, and the counterweight arm has broken where it joins the mount body. So I'm going to have to fix that somehow. And then move on 30 years. And Lisa kindly bought me this Jessup's kind of introductory telescope. And this is what got me into the hobby back in around 2012. Straight away from using that, I wanted to try and take photographs of what I could see. But I quickly discovered that the mount just wasn't suitable for that kind of thing because of all of the vibration, etc. in it. So I upgraded the mount to an EQ5 in 2014. Then I moved. We go on about 5 years then before I had a little bit of a hiatus. Life gets in the way, as I'm sure we all know. But I put some RA and deck motors on it, which were just controlled off a hand control unit in 2019. And then in 2020, last year, I upgraded the mount to a go-to kind of facility. And I upgraded the tube as well to a Skywatch 150 PDS. So in the end, it's ended up like Trigger's broom and completely rebuilt the scope. And the old one now is in my loft waiting for me to donate to my brother, one of my younger brothers, when I see him next. So that's been the progress of my my telescopes. This is an afocal image taken with the Jessups and an Apple iPhone. I'm not sure which model it was. And that was one of my earliest astro images. And these are all single frame pictures, which is not bad, I don't think, all things considered.
Oh, that's really good.
the information that you see on screen here is from the camera directly, that is imported into iPhoto from the Apple Macintosh platform, and it's really good because it tells you, it says ISO 50 there, and half a second. So I was thrilled to be able to take that picture back in 2013.
So what sort of iPhone was that? A 4S?
Now, if it was
your next screen said iPhone 4S.
Yeah, it could well have been the 4S, Phil, but I'm not. I couldn't completely swear to it, but I think it was probably the 4S. So then we've got one of Jupiter here with the 3 of its moons, and it's massively overexposed. And this shot below it, that remains my best picture of Jupiter today. Again, taken with the iPhone 4S, and believe it or not, that kind of represents more or less what I could see through the eyepiece. So again, these are afocal pictures, and I think, if I'm completely honest, I probably got rather lucky with that shot, and yeah, it was a bit of a fluke. This again, another afocal shot of the moon, and I think I was using the slow shutter app by then. And again, I'm still proud of this picture, because I think it's pretty good for the equipment used at the time.
I think it looks brilliant. Remind me again, what does afocal mean?
So afocal is the kind of photography that you're doing, Annette. It means that there's an eyepiece in between the telescope and the camera.
Right, okay, cool.
Sure, yeah. When you remove the eyepiece and the camera is directly mounted to the telescope, then that's called prime focus.
Ah, that's what I'm doing. I don't have an eyepiece. I just have the camera mounted onto the scope. Right.
I thought I remembered pictures of your setup with lenses in between. I beg your pardon.
Yeah, I think there was one of the conjunction where I'd got my iPhone against the eyepiece, but that was because the camera battery ran out.
So you're doing prime focus, where effectively your telescope is your lens, basically.
Yeah, right.
Okay, cool. Great. So yeah, this is, I like the information on this one. It says it's ISO 50, and it says the shutter time is 0.0 seconds. So I'm guessing that's not quite right, but that's a very fast shutter speed. So I put this in for fun, really. This is my astronomy progress, and this little horizontal part here shows you how I put it to one side for a little bit, because I just didn't have the opportunity to do it. But I kind of put it in here just to show that, you can park the hobby for a while, and just because you put it down for a bit, it doesn't mean that you can't come back to it. So I just thought that was worth kind of noting.
My horizontal line's about 30 years.
Love it. So this is my current setup now, and I think the only additional information on here is the Canon 600D, which I got in October of last year. This probably represents one of my first deep sky images, the Andromeda Galaxy M31. And I think, but I can't swear to it, I think I was probably, this was probably taken with the camera, without a computer hooked up to the camera, just using the camera LCD to frame the image and all of that kind of thing. There's no light pollution filter used on this shot, and you can see it's very, very heavily light polluted. But I remember when I took it, I was, it was my first deep sky image. It is stacked. I don't know how many stacked frames there are on this now. I can't remember. And there's no calibration frames used either. But I was really thrilled with that. And yeah, it's when you take a photograph of a deep sky image, something that you can't really see with the naked eye, and then all of a sudden all of these stars start to appear on the camera screen. It really is something to behold. I've since then I've moved away from just using the camera on the telescope, and using the LCD screen. So I'm now using the laptop. So as we speak, my camera is connected to this laptop. The mount is connected to this laptop, and I'm all ready to go for an imaging session. But I kind of mainly wanted to have tonight to put over how the radical difference that connecting your camera and your scope up to your laptop can make to your astrophotography. And this little graphic shows the software that I use to do that. So this on the right here, you've got you've got Backyard EOS. There's a Nikon equivalent version. So that's your capturing software, and the black line represents that you need to connect a cable to your computer between the two. This icon here is the Stellarium app, which is just a kind of a star chart app. And there's others like I think it's called Cart du Ciel, and there's quite a few out there. So this is the one that I use, and I'll come on to how I use that in a little bit in the next few slides. And then this EQ mod really is the main piece of software that everything kind of works around, because the EQ mod acts as an interface between your telescope and your computer, and Stellarium and your computer. And considering it's a free piece of software, it's absolutely remarkable. And so I'm now using Windows software via my Apple Mac, but via this Parallels for Mac piece of software. I did try and do all of this that you can see on this screen here via Mac software, and I even bought a little bit, which didn't cost too much. But EQ mod doesn't work on the Mac. There's a piece of software called EQ Mac, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get it working the way that you need it to in order to control the mount. So I gave up on it. I did try for quite a bit, but I gave up, and I made an investment in this software. And again, that's been another kind of groundbreaking moment, really. I'll come on to the cost of that in a few slides to come. I thought if you're happy for me to, I'll just take you through what I regard as a typical setup, though I must say that my typical setup has now changed slightly towards the end of this little section. Does anybody want to ask anything before I carry on?
I've got a question about the laptop. How powerful does it need to be able to manage, as you're imaging, but then also to be able to process images?
The tracking and the imaging part of it's a good question. And the tracking and the imaging require virtually no processor power, or very little. Did I say the tracking and the imaging then? Yes, yeah. The post-processing is when, and perhaps the stacking actually as well. When you stack the images and then you end up, after you've stacked them, you end up with a TIFF, a .tif or .tiff file, typically 16-bit TIFF file, which you then import into something like Adobe Photoshop or GIMP, or there are others out there. All of that stacking of your subframes and the post-processing, that will heavily task your processor. So before I invested in the Parallels software, and you may have seen some messages on WhatsApp where I was asking people what laptops they use, and I think the answer to your question is essentially you need to buy the best computer that you can afford. You need like a minimum of an i5 processor, ideally an i7. You'd ideally want 32 gigabytes of RAM. I think you're probably looking at spending somewhere north of £500, more like 700, and if you can afford it, probably £1,000. Some people use a gaming laptop because they have a processor and RAM that's capable of doing all the tasks that you would do in post-processing and stacking. Does anybody else want to add to that? Because I'm sure there's a couple of others with good contributions there.
I'm not sure I would agree with some of that.
Yeah, please chip in.
I'm just thinking back. I mean, the last serious amounts of things I did with stacking and processing, which I did on my old laptop, is now 10 years old, and it was quite capable of handling it. And certainly my desktop, which I use for video processing and all sorts of stuff, has only got 16 gig of RAM in it. The old laptop has only got 8 gig of RAM in it. Having more is clearly useful, but I'm not sure you necessarily would need it to do what you're talking about.
I
suppose.
Sorry,
Trevor. You carry on.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I would say, yeah, absolutely, yes. It's always worthwhile getting the best computer, laptop, whatever you choose to use, whether it's a desktop or a laptop, because time marches on, and all software in general just keeps eating up more of everything as you go on. So always go for the best you can afford to get. But I wouldn't necessarily, from my experience, say you would need it specifically to do astrophotography with.
Yeah, I guess I've watched some videos of people doing stacking, and the stacking is quite heavily processor hungry. And I've seen YouTube videos where they've said, right, I'm going to click start now, and I'll stop the video and I'll come back after it's done. And depending on how many subframes that you're asking the software to stack, obviously it's a factor. But people have, in these videos, I've seen people leaving it stacking overnight or for a couple of hours or something like that. So I guess the more up to date your processor and the memory you've got, etc., the quicker it will do all of that thing, and the easier it will do it. But if time isn't a particular kind of factor, then yeah, I guess it's not as significant.
The other thing I would warn against is talking about i3, i5, and i7 as being relevant for processor power, because largely they're not. There are plenty of i5s that are a lot more powerful than i7s, and plenty of i3s are a lot more powerful than i5s. And what you need to do is look up the processor you're planning to buy on some. I use CPU Benchmark. Look it up on there, and you'll find they're all over the place in terms of which one's the best price. It's the numbers that follow the i3 and the i5 that are useful to get an idea of processing power that the CPU is capable of, rather than whether it's an i3 or an i5 or an i7 or any other manufacturer.
I guess, Annette, and I say this in all sincerity, I'm not the best person to answer your question, and Trevor's got far more knowledge that's worth tapping up in this regard. But what I probably would say is, you know, it's worth trying when you actually are at that stage. It's worth trying it on your own laptop that you currently have and seeing how it copes with it, because, you know, maybe it'll be fine.
Yeah, cool. Okay, that makes sense.
Anybody want to say anything else before I move on?
I live in a house where my son's partner is a very, very skilled. He builds computers, builds gaming computers. And if you know someone, if you've got that level of skill, or you can do it yourself, or know someone who can do it, you can get very, very fast, powerful computers for a lot less money than you get them on the high street.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never actually bought a desktop from a shop ever.
The lad James, he set to and built our home computer. He just bought a whole set of a box of parts came, and I thought, what on earth are we going to do all this? And 2 hours later, there was a functioning computer, and it's immeasurably cheaper than buying on high street. But I wouldn't know where to start, but there are people out there who do.
Oh, okay then. I'll be tapping him up at some point.
Well, they're off to London in a couple of weeks, so you better be quick.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So a typical setup for me now. I don't know how familiar this is to. I might be teaching grandmothers to suck eggs, etc. But this represents a typical setup for me. I take my scope out from it where it dwells. I point the scope north. I level the scope. I polar align to Polaris. Return the scope to the home stroke park position. If you don't do this, then this can lead to horrendous results when you do your first slew. And so this is me describing my setup with the camera connected to the laptop, etc., and the scope and the mounts connected. So I then go into backyard EOS, and I go to live image. So the camera is now switched on and looking through the telescope at the night sky. I choose a bright star in Stellarium, and I slew to it. So there's a keyboard shortcut that I use, and by magic, the telescope sets off and slews towards Capella, and it's hopefully not too far away. Now, this next one here, use EQ mod to align scope with Capella. I've actually moved on from that now because I've managed to get this thing called plate solving to work. But I can come back to that. But I'll stick to this script and just carry on. So with EQ mod, you have up, down, and left and right arrows, for want of a better description, and you can use your laser scope or your red dot finder after you've slewed to Stellarium to see how near or far out you are, and then you would move with the EQ mod pad buttons. On the software you'd align your scope to Capella, and then you perform a sync. So once you've got the scope actually on Capella, you then sync the coordinates. So Stellarium now knows that what the telescope is looking at is the object that you asked it to go to initially. I don't know how complicated all of that sounded. Does everybody kind of get the gist of that?
Yeah.
Sorry, Andy, I was just going to ask you. So when you're polar aligning, are you using plate solving now to actually go to the NCP, or are you just using Polaris as a
No,
fairly
good question, Jason. I'm still using my polar finder, and I'm still doing my normal standard polar alignment. The plate solving comes in at I hope you can see my cursor on the screen, but the plate solving comes in at this stage here where it says hopefully not too far away. But
right. Am I right in thinking you use the plate solving then to sort of make your polar alignment more accurately by then going back to the wedge and then adjusting it, don't you? Is that right or not?
Not quite. I'll skip forward then, and what happens, Jason, is so this is a live a frame and focus image. So this is the backyard EOS software. Yeah. Looking at the night sky. So if you imagine that can you see my cursor?
Yeah.
Okay, so imagine not Polaris. Imagine Capella was here in this top left quadrant. With another piece of software called Astrophotography, which interfaces with backyard EOS, you ask backyard EOS to take a short exposure of the night sky. So it looks at that exposure and it knows where the telescope was supposed to be pointing. It looks at the stars in the image that it's taken. It looks at its database and says, you think you're pointing here, you're actually pointing there, if it recognizes the stars anyway. And then it does a corrective movement, and then it takes another picture, and it repeats that process until the object that you asked it to go to in Stellarium is in the center of this frame. And it does do all of that, and it is like magic, and basically it takes your setting up and alignment instead of. So if you had a go-to telescope and you using the hand controller of your go-to that came with your telescope and you weren't connected to a laptop, you would do a polar alignment and then you would do a star alignment, and you'd do either a 1, a 2, or a 3-star alignment. And what you're doing there is you're improving the accuracy of the alignment of your telescope to the pole star.
Because I'm right in thinking you can use plate solving to get your amount very accurately centered on the NCP, can't you?
I think you can. I think you can, but the critical thing to, in my understanding at least, the critical thing to a decent night's imaging is the area of the sky that you're focusing on. It's going to be a relatively small area of the night sky. If you've got one target for the night, your telescope is only going to be focused on a particular area. Yes, it appears to move across the night sky, but what I'm trying to say is your telescope only needs to be accurately aligned to that particular area. So you could have your telescope really very well aligned to Capella, which was in in the north, let's say. But then if you slewed your telescope 180 degrees to the south and asked it to look at another star, it might be a good way away from it, because with the best will in the world, the gearing inside the mounts, they're not as accurate as especially when these things only cost us several £100. They're not the Rolls Royces of mechanization, if for want of a better word. So the whole idea of star aligning is that you choose a star that's near the object that you're going to image, and you get very good alignment on that star. You use that star to focus, which is what I was about to come on to. You get your focus set on that star, and then hopefully the area of sky that you're going to image is not that far away, and then you can be quite confident that you can be confident in your tracking, in the tracking of that object as you image. You might be able to do kind of 2-minute exposure, something like that, without. There's another aspect which I've not even covered in this little presentation, that's called guiding, where you use a guiding scope. Which
I was just going to ask you if you were auto guiding or not. Yeah. Yeah,
I'm not auto guiding. That's another step as well. And all the professionals recommend that you auto guide as well. But I'm just not there yet, and I don't think I need it in this area of the country, because I'm not going to be able to do exposures that are greater than 2 minutes without suffering horrifically from light pollution. So unless I'm going to very deep sky locations, I don't really see the need for that.
I suppose it depends at the end of the day. If you're near the horizon, you've probably got to be a lot more accurate than if you're around the sort of like Polaris or something like that. It makes a big difference to how accurate your polar alignment is, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, your tracking in your alignment is basically, you want the stars not to elongate in any way, don't you? And you want your object to stay in the center of your picture as much as possible. So I know we went off on a slight tangent there, so apologies about that. What I was going to come on to was the focusing of your bright star that might be Vega or Capella. And there's a feature in Backyard EOS which is really, really good for this. So if you imagine that you've got your bright star in the center of this rectangle here, it then appears in this box here. And this value here, where it says 64, it refers to something known as the full width half modulation, which I've got absolutely no idea what that means in real terms. But when your star is in this reticle, you can achieve the best focus by getting this number as low as possible when you've got this set to FWHM. So if you were to imagine that your star is in this reticle in the middle, you go out and you play with your focuser and you look back at this value here, and when it's at its lowest value, you can be rest assured that your telescope is at its best focus. So it takes the guesswork away from am I or aren't I kind of thing. Does that make sense? Mm. Does anybody use Stellarium at this stage for anything? Has anybody downloaded it onto their laptops? Yep. Or?
I use it.
Yeah. So this picture here of this is a screen grab of Stellarium, and what I'm trying to show here is that this red rectangle here represents the camera sensor of my 600D. There is a facility in Stellarium called Oculars, and this box in the top right hand corner of the screen grab, and what you do is you tell Stellarium your lens pieces, so you can input all the information about every lens piece that you've got if you're interested in doing observing or afocal photography. And then you also input your camera, whether it be your DSLR or your CCD, and then you put your telescope information into it as well. And then what you can do is you can select the object that you're going to image. So here we're looking at M81 and M82. And you can click on Oculars, and you can say, right, well, what will that look like through the frame of my camera? And this is a fabulous little facility to be able to see, before you start your imaging session, what you can expect to see when you do actually start your imaging session. I've got some other frames later on coming up that show you the same image, but looking through or it might be a different image, but looking through the eyepieces as well. It's a very, very useful facility, because you can also, in Stellarium, you can start Stellarium going and you can fast forward to a particular time and day. So you can say, right, well, where will the moon be in this image at this time of night? Is that going to affect my my imaging session, because the moon is going to be right next to my deep sky object? And as I said earlier, this is the kind of this is the piece of software that you would use as well. You'd click on one of these objects and then click I click Control on one, and that starts the telescope off to slew to that object. And when your telescope is on it, you see a little icon here that represents your telescope is aligned to the image that you've asked it to go to. So this is just me showing you how Stellarium can help you with your framing. And this is a real representation of, because this is a sub-frame exposure of M81 and M82, both in the frame and in backyard EOS. I'm skipping forward a little bit quickly now because I'm just conscious of time. But in this image here, you can see that there's a histogram, and this histogram here is representative of this image that was taken there. So every time you take an image, it updates down the bottom of the software here, and the most recent one goes into the far right hand box. And on this, you have a histogram on the back of in your LCD cameras on your DSLR, but the same histogram comes into the software. And this histogram is your, I don't want to use the word Bible, but it's your bread and butter really when you are wanting to get the correct exposure and the ISO setting for your image. Because it's my understanding that what you're after is, you can see the red, green and blue spikes here. You want them to be 1/3 in from the left of the histogram. For astro imaging. I'm not sure where you'd expect them to be for terrestrial photography, but from what I can gather, this is the holy grail to for where you want your histograms to spike when you are taking deep sky object images. Does anybody, is that new information to anybody, or does anybody want to contest that or say?
I've not heard that before, Andy. Why is that? Do you know?
I don't, Jason. All I know is that the man that built this software, this backyard EOS, I watched a video where he talked about it on YouTube, and he basically gave forth that information, and essentially it means so if the histogram was over to the left, you'd be too far underexposed. If it was over to the right, you'd be too far overexposed. So you could logically ask, well, why don't you have it in the middle? And I can only presume it's something to do with the fact that when you process these stacked images, you have to stretch the data. So I don't know whether, Jason, you have it here so that it gives you some room to stretch the data, whereas if you had it in the middle, you'd run out of stretch room quicker. I've no idea, mate.
It might be just that it's I don't know, I'm just speculating. It might be easier to deal with a slightly more overexposed picture than an underexposed one, perhaps. You know, maybe you've got
I don't know. This is towards the underexposed end rather than this. So over here is over here to the left is underexposed, and over to the right is up. So it's.
So that would imply that it was supposed to be slightly more exposed than underexposed. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah. You want it more underexposed than overexposed.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Apologies.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. So as you're looking at that, is that line that you're on at the moment, is that the center or?
No. So it's in thirds, Jason.
Oh, is it? Okay. Didn't realize that. I'm sorry. I thought it was just that first frame. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know how well that's come over. So yeah, it's in it's because I haven't, this one in particular isn't where it should be. It should be here.
Right.
So then it would be on the first third of the histogram. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize it covered that whole area. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You can actually choose how many lines this has with this button here, where it's got two there. That number 2 there represents those 2 lines there. But you can have 1, or you can have 3, I think, or you can have 2.
Okay.
And then this right angle, this line here, this 45-degree line, this enables you to stretch the image in this picture here by moving that line, but it doesn't affect the actual image that you've taken. It just affects the image on the screen. And the point of that is that if you start moving this line here, you could reveal parts of the image that perhaps, if it was underexposed, say, you could stretch it in a kind of a semi-live kind of way to say, yes, I can see those, that is the area of the sky that I want to be looking at, if that makes sense. And then that reset button just resets it back to 45 degrees. So at the end of the session, when you've done you've taken, people like to talk about 2 hours of data, and that picture I took of the Rosette Nebula the other day was 20 minutes worth of data, and they were 65-second exposures. If you're going to do one of these imaging sessions, you owe it to yourself to then take these calibration frames. I'm not going to lie, for any of you who haven't done it and haven't entered the dark world of full-on deep sky imaging and calibration frames, and it all sounds like quite a lot, but you have to shoot flat, darks, and bias frames. 2 of them are really, really easy. One of them is a bit more time consuming. I won't go into that just now, again, because of time, but here I'm shooting what's called a flat frame, and I've got an it's like a electrostatic panel or something like that a friend gave me, and this is to get a flat image on the camera. The point of these calibration frames is to reduce the signal, to reduce the noise to reduce the noise in the overall stacked image, to improve the signal to noise ratio. But that's another kind of topic in itself, really. Once you've done that, you're then looking at stacking images using something like Deep Sky Stacker, which is free software. Or before I was using that, I was using ASTAP. There are others available, and they're all free from what I can, the majority of them are free from what I can gather. You then export that to a 16-bit TIFF image, and then once you've got that 16-bit TIFF, you import it into something like GIMP or Photoshop for post-processing. And then this was my not very spectacular results of M821 and M822.
Andy, sorry, can I ask, are you stacking raw images there or not?
Yeah, you have to shoot in RAW.
Yeah, you're stacking raw though, are you? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
They actually, they're converted, Jason, into the stacking software. It takes them in as raw, but converts them into another file type. I can't remember what it's called now, but it does it automatically.
DNG, Andy. Is it DNG?
It's not PNG. I'll have a look and post it later. But
just if you come across it, because I've got a Fuji, I'm struggling to find anything that'll handle Fuji raw files at the moment. If anybody's got any suggestions on that, I'd be very interested. Okay.
Right.
I'm
okay. Yeah. But
and then stacking them at the moment. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, as far as I know, well, I'm stacking. I am definitely stacking raw files in Deep Sky Stacker. So. If I go back to, so can you see it on there? So see there, Jason, where it says raw.
Yeah.
So this is the other beauty of Backyard EOS. By the way, I'm raving about it. I'm not on any kind of commission. But yeah, so it does tell you you can select what you are recording in, but you need to be in RAW for this process. So I've got here next steps, and my next steps are to use the plate solving. I now have finally got that working. It was a bit of an uphill struggle, I won't lie, but I've done it now, and it's I just can't put into words how it has changed everything again. It's absolutely phenomenal, because it just takes all the guesswork out of doing it. You're still doing it all. It's not the fact that this is all automatic. I don't want anybody to get the impression that this is like that piece of kit that we looked at for $4,000, Stella something. This takes a lot of effort for you to do all of this. You're still the person that gets the images at the end of the day, but the plate solving is a massive help in doing so. The plate solving, this is called Astro Tortilla, and again, it's a free piece of kit. And this, what it does is it takes control of your camera capture software. And I won't go into it in that much detail, but here it says 10 seconds there. It takes a 10-second exposure. It looks at it, says, am I seeing what I expect to see? Yes, no. If not, it solves to where it should be, and then it takes another picture, and you can have it do that to within 1 arc minute, or you can even define that even smaller. But it probably is another video to talk about the plate solving. But it is I put there, it is a game changer. And if anybody's interested in going down this route, I'd be more than happy to share the benefit of the trials and tribulations that it took me to get it going, but it really is worth it. So just moving quickly on, these are this is back to the ocular thing in Stellarium. So this is, now it's looking through, this is what a 12.5 milli Plottle lens that I have would look like looking at the Orion Nebula. And then that's a 20 mil, that's a 15 mil, and that's a 28 mil. So you can see the different framing, if you like, of these objects. and then that's my the sensor of my Canon. So even if you decide that connecting your camera to your laptop isn't for you just now, using Stellarium, inputting your equipment into Stellarium is really worth doing in terms of working out what you can look at what looking at in the night sky will look like for you with your particular equipment. So I really recommend you having a look at that. And then I think I'm near the end now, but these are a few images since using the Canon the 600D. This was the great conjunction the night before, the full total conjunction. That's obviously a moon shot. That's my best Orion Nebula to date, which you've all seen anyway. And that's that Rosette Nebula one, which is massively overstretched to get all of the hydrogen alpha. So all of this area around the edges, it should be really dark. But because it's only 20 minutes of data, you stretch it so far, and then it just there's not enough data there basically. So there's too much noise and not enough signal.
And I suppose that's where the darks and the flats and everything come into their own as well, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely, yeah, because they help take away that noise as well. Because the sensor of your camera has electronic noise inherently in it, and the temperature of the sensor and all that kind of thing. I don't profess to understand it all in any great detail, and I'm just kind of following the well-trodden paths of others, basically. Yeah. But yeah, they absolutely, those calibration frames. If you try all of that, if you do all of your light, so your standard image frames, your subs are called lights, and if you take all your lights but don't do any calibration frames, then your final image just won't be as good.
To be fair, Andy, that still looks remarkable. So
well, I could show you a picture of the same nebula, the Rosette Nebula, that a friend of mine's taken, and it knocks my image into a cocked hat, and it's breathtaking. But he took it at the back end of last year, and he had a special filter in as well, and he took over 2 hours worth of data, and that you just can't compete with that. But what I would say is that I've got 20 minutes of data so far, and after tonight, I'm hoping that my scope is still being able to see the Rosette Nebula from its location where it is now, and I'm hoping to add to that data, so you can actually, I could do an hour tonight and add that to the 20 minutes that I've already got. So you can do multiple separate sessions and build this data up over time. I think the caveat to that is that ideally your camera sensor will be at a similar temperature, and also you have to have the same ISO and exposure length settings as well, from what I can gather.
Andy, sorry, I was going to ask, you are filtering those, aren't you? What sort of filter are you using?
I've got one filter in between the camera body and the focusing tube, and that's a city light suppression filter.
Right. Yeah. So you're really trying to kill the light pollution rather than sort of the narrowband sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you go back, going the wrong way. If you go back in the top right hand corner here, where it's particularly gradiented, that's where the moon is in that part of the sky. The moon just completely washes out that corner. And when I stretch this image in GIMP, that area of the picture, the top right corner, is the part that goes first. And as soon as I see that going, I know that that's as far as I can take that data. Okay. This is what I paid for Parallels, £70. I believe it's £70 a year, but you don't have to subscribe to it on a yearly basis. All that you lose out is if they do upgrade to the software. after that year. If you get them free within your year subscription, once you expire, then you don't get the upgrades for free, and you'd have to resubscribe. I got a Windows 10 license legitimately online for $17.99. If people go this route, if any Mac users go this route, I urge you not to buy your license from Microsoft, because they'll charge you over £130 for it.
I think I paid £130 for mine, actually.
Right.
When you say legitimately online, are you sure that was legitimately online? Because that seems an astronomically low price for a legitimate online.
Yeah, I did query it, Trevor, because I'm not somebody that likes to break the law, if you like, or I don't want to cheat people out of money that they deserve or something like that. As far as I can tell, Trevor, the due diligence that I did, it is a legitimate license. Yeah. I don't understand the behind the scenes workings of how you can get them for. I mean, there was somewhere else where it was £14, I think.
Well, let me just say, throw this into the mix. If you do already have a Windows 7 or 8 or whatever license, then you can actually still upgrade to Windows 10 free of charge anyway, although Microsoft aren't telling you that. Because I've just done it on three different computers. There is a mechanism to do it, which they have. Basically, if you remember when they went up to Windows 10, they told everybody for a year they could upgrade free to Windows 10. The route to do that is still there. It's just that they've hidden the link to it. So if anybody wants to know how to do it, I actually have the instructions, and I've done it 3 times. But you do need a pre-existing earlier Windows version. And that is entirely because you're using Microsoft facilities.
But I can if I can add a little bit to that, Trevor, and I would say that when you buy and install Parallels, it comes with a version of Windows 10 as part of the package. What it doesn't have, but it doesn't have a license. But the download to the software is part of the Parallels, and then you just need to submit a valid license. And I did research it online, and as I say, I can share where I got this from as well if anybody is interested. But I'm fairly certain it's legitimate. And in the same way that Microsoft aren't telling you that information you just said, Trevor, they equally might be happy to keep it from you that you can buy legitimate Windows licenses from elsewhere and you don't have to go through them. It could be something as simple as that, I suppose.
Yes, yeah. If anybody needs that information, just let me know and I'll send you the link of how to do it.
I got told I bought Office from a place that was very, very cheap, and the guy I referred to earlier who built my computer showed me that it ended up coming from somewhere in Russia, and he did encourage me not to do it again.
Yeah.
But
well, I know mine. I'm sure mine was around about that amount, and I wish I'd known that earlier, Andy, because paying £130 for Windows kind of broke my heart, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Jason. Trevor's got me seriously wondering now whether this is a legitimate license, but
in reality, if it verifies when you verify it, it's legitimate. Yeah. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point, Martin. Yeah.
So
the other piece of software there, the Backyard EOS, it's a Canadian guy who's built this software, and he built it as a labour of love. And I imagine he's made it a going concern now. And that's $50, and that's as good as for the quality of that software. I think it's pretty reasonable, if I'm completely honest. All the other pieces of software on the screen are free. Some of them are happy for you to donate to them. This Astrophotography one is the one that does the plate solving. Just to reiterate, EQ Mod is the one that communicates between your mount and your computer, and Stellarium is your star chart kind of I haven't put Deep Sky Stacker on here, which I'm now using, but Astap is free. Deep Sky Stacker is free. This Cygwin or Cygwin is another piece of software you need to use this Astro Tortilla plate solving software. So just briefly then, some reflections before I kind of, I've got a suggestion that I can make at the end of this, but my reflections on this hobby is that it is a challenging hobby. There's lots of technical things to overcome. The learning curve is steep. There's a lot of arcane language to learn, and those technical obstacles which I just referred to. It is possible to use a Mac, but in my opinion, as it currently stands, for what it's worth, the development it's not there yet. You can use it to an extent, but it's just not the same experience, unfortunately.
Can I butt in there?
Yes, please do, Mike.
It's because there's two pieces of development software there, PixInsight and AstroPixel Processor.
Yeah.
We'll take your frames, stack them, and develop them, but they cost money.
Mike, I was going to say, have you had experience with PixInsight? Because it was something I was interested in, but it's a lot of money, isn't it?
It is. I've got it.
Yeah.
It's worth it, but there's a big steep learning curve on it.
Yeah, it's supposed to be quite complicated, isn't it?
It can be.
Yeah.
AstroPixel is cheaper and easier to use.
Right.
But it's not as flexible.
Yeah, I might look into that.
So Mike, can I are you using Apple, Mike?
I've got an Apple, but I'm using Windows at the moment.
Yeah.
On both machines. You're sort of stuck with the capture side of things, unless you use K-Stars or ECOS. Yeah.
The real key piece of software is this EQ mod, because this is the bit that does the controlling of the mount, and because that is Windows only.
They're working on a version that works across all platforms.
Right.
Called Alpaca.
Right. Called what? Sorry.
Alpaca.
Right. I've heard of that. Yeah. Well, I mean, once that.
Yeah. Sorry.
Once that comes, then I guess back to the Mac maybe.
Mm.
And then I'd say, I should have said this earlier on perhaps, but there's an adjustment of expectations when you move from observing to imaging. There's an adjustment of expectations when you realise that you can't just snap an image with your camera of what you can see through your telescope lens. So I don't know how many of you can relate to that, but you're looking at the moon, or you're looking at Jupiter or something like that, and you think, oh, I just want to get a picture of that, and it just isn't that easy. There's so much to it, and anybody who's held a camera to their eyepiece can kind of get that. And I remember feeling quite crestfallen. It's just not that simple. And then the last thing I wanted to say was that you can really the lengths that you can go to with this imaging is as far as you want to take it, and I think it can become all-consuming. But I really don't want to lose the thrill of observing at the expense of capturing. And you can, unless you've got either two telescopes or you've got two scopes mounted on the same mount, one just for observing and one for imaging. You can't do the two things at the same time. But I love looking through my telescope, but I haven't done it for ages since I've started imaging. So I really need to kind of make sure that doesn't disappear. And then the final thing was that there is a passionate and helpful and resourceful community out there to share experiences and to help anybody who wants to, kind of go down this pathway. I'm in the foothills of the foothills, as I was telling Andrew about it. That's as far as you may look at what I've done and think, gosh, he's way ahead of me. That's where I see myself, because it is just such a big learning curve. And I think that's it.
Right. Thank you, Andy.
And that was amazing.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Andy. That was brilliant. Thank you.
Yes, and I'm just going to disappear out because in a few minutes the ISS is coming over and I was going to start. If you're still here when I get back, I'll tell you how I got on. Otherwise, I shall catch up another time.
Okay, Martin.
How long are you planning to be on?
I think
I should go to bed, but I mean,
probably not far off, are we?
I saw a dot next to the moon.
Oh yeah, the little dot next to the moon. Brilliant. Oh yeah, look at that. It's really close. That's really good.
Wow.
But I think that's been really useful, Andy, because I think it's kind of given me confidence of getting the right stuff to take that next step, really. So and also I've got a professional that I can refer to should I need any help setting it all up.
I'm absolutely here to help everybody to move on to that next step as and when they're ready to take it. I just
outside, it's fantastically bright. The ISS now.
Right. So we all go and have a look.
It's still going over here.
Bearing off into the east, I think, as I see it.
Out now. Go on.
I'm hoping these clouds are going to break up.
If I can't see it here, you shouldn't be able to because it's going out over
I saw it.
Leeds distance now.
Yeah, I saw it just disappearing off to the east. I think, Trevor.
Yeah, it's a long way gone.
I saw it for a few minutes. Well, I saw it for half a minute. I've seen it before with a space capsule waiting to dock. So you see two dots moving together.
Wow, that sounds great.
Did you see it, Annette?
No, I think there were too many clouds. I saw it for about a split second,
Yeah.
and by the time I'd gone, turn the light off, it had gone behind a cloud. So,
Yeah. I saw it.
Phil, I don't want to keep people too long, but how did any of that, or how did all that sound to you? Where you're moving from observing to imaging, and you're looking at smartphone, and all of that. Does that sound incredibly daunting?
I find it very, very interesting. I can promise you, it's not somewhere I'm going to go.
Yeah.
I like the observing, and I can't begin to contemplate going down the journey that you're on. I haven't got the patience, I haven't got the time, I haven't got the motivation.
Yeah. I
like looking at the night sky, and I like looking at other people's photographs, and I'm intrigued to see if I can take a photograph of the moon with my £16 iPhone adapter, my second-hand iPhone, and my Audi bird spotting telescope. And if I can't, I'll get my proper telescope out. I might have a slightly better chance, but that will be the end of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair enough, and I can well understand why you would choose that without question. Yeah.
You said at the end you didn't want to lose out on the observing, and I spent so little time observing anyway. But
I find it's a good idea to have some nice wide-angle binoculars with you while you're imaging.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
You can get
cheers for
off eBay for about £20 some really old but very, very wide field 8x30s or something like that, and the views they give you while you're observing, and you can just leave your telescope to do whatever and look around. It's great.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for the ground to dry out and the sky to clear.
Well, it's misty here, but it looks like I've got some good frames of the ISS, so I'm just loading them up at the moment to see if it's worth saving any.
So, Annette, is all the imaging you don't do without a laptop? You just do it with the camera?
Yeah. So I just do it through the little LCD, so because it's got live view.
Yeah.
So I've learned through patience really that if I put it on live view and I zoom in to help with the focus of it, and then I've got an what they called interferometers, the the clicker thing.
Yeah.
And I literally step back from the telescope, wait for it to stop wobbling, and then I take a photo. So, and I found that that's how I've been able to get better results.
That image you had of the moon the other night was fantastic.
Thank you. I was really pleased with that.
No, it's great. It's really, really good.
Yeah.
Can I just say to Andrew, thank you for the invitation to take people through my setup tonight. I've really enjoyed it, and I'm equally happy for anybody to ask me further questions outside of tonight in the group. But I'm also equally happy, to learn from people who've already trodden in done the steps that I'm doing, and have got some experience that they can give to me as well. So you know, I really want it to be a two-way street in that regard.
No, I think it's been great, Andy, to see your experience, and we're all sort of learning from each other, and it's great. And thank you ever so much for doing this presentation. I'm open to ideas about what we'd like to do at the next when we next have a meeting. But so if you've got any ideas, let me have them, and then we can set up another meeting like this next month. It's just such a shame that every time we do this, it's a clear sky. It's just sod's law. It's just amazing.
Well, maybe we just need to set a meeting every single evening, and then we'll have clear skies all the time.
Great idea.
Seriously, if you want to share thoughts, comments, everyone sat here has an email address.
Yeah. I mean, I'm quite happy to share, whatever I've learnt. I mean, I guide with my cameras. I take very short exposures, so I end up with thousands of frames, which require an awful lot of stacking.
Mm-hmm.
I use going back over what mentioned before, I've got an i3 that actually captures the shots, but I've got quite a beast of a computer doing the processing, because it can take 5 hours or so. And that's with a 12 core and 64 gig of memory.
Wow.
That's a lot of number crunching.
It does an awful lot of number crunching. But as I want to use the machine for sort of other things as well, then that's the sort of thing that's necessary. Otherwise, you are leaving it overnight to do this kind of work.
So, Martin, do you get the images of the ISS?
Yeah, I'm just running through at the moment. It's a good job. I adjusted my focus halfway through, and it's a good job I did, because my earlier shots are not in focus, but my later ones, they look all right. I'm just running it through PIPP and ISS mode at the moment to crop the frames and save them as a video, so I can actually see where the good images are to process. It'll be done in a couple of minutes. If you want to hang about and have a look at what the video's like, I'll transfer it from my main computer to the laptop once it's finished, and you can have a look what it's like. But
if I can just fill a little bit of time then, and this is primarily aimed at Annette, I have to say, but in the Backyard EOS software, there's a facility in it to do planetary imaging, and it basically shoots an AVI film, and so you can use this on the moon, and once you've got that AVI film, you can then, outside of the Backyard EOS software, you can then stack that again with some other free software, and then you can get a composite image of the moon. So it's rather than you can take individual images of the moon and stack them just as standard, like the pictures you're taking. But from what I can gather, a video file is the best way to do planetary or moon imaging, and you can do that from within Backyard EOS as well. So that's it's not something I've tried as yet, but I do intend to do it. I'll share the results when I've done it.
Yeah.
I shoot 4K video from the back of my DSLR for the moon, and I keep the runtime quite short, between 30 seconds and a minute, because things like Registax can't cope with 4K video very well, but it copes with it all right if you keep the frame time short. So like when it was first quarter just, I ran 12 20-second 4K videos and stacked them. Actually, for a change, I used Auto Stacker 2 for them, because they come off as an MOV file. I run them into PIPP, convert them into AVI, then I put them into Auto Stacker 2, and I've put the latest version of that on my Flickr. I think most of you should have the link to my Flickr, and it came out okay. One or two of them were a little bit soft, but considering they were done from a 20-second video, you'll see if you have a look on my Flickr, it's a massive file, because the moon is made up of 12 panels, each is a 4K video, so you actually get a pretty decent large image. And when I get a good night, it was really turbulent here. When I get a sharp night, I actually run a full minute of 4K video, and the stacking through that, just with a DSLR without computerized control, just using the telescope running as a tracking mount effectively. It comes off pretty well.
What size files are you getting?
Oh, quite large, several hundred meg, because at 4K at 30 frames a second, that knocks quite. But I don't save them. I don't keep them for very long, because once I've got the image and uploaded it to Flickr, I tend to ditch all the videos and just keep the individual. This has worked. Just keep the individual JPEG files. I'm just going to have a look before I say anything to see what this looks like. It's just finished.
That moon's amazing though.
But it should, looking at the individual frames, it starts off quite badly and then goes sharp. Oh yeah, it needs redoing. It's not very bright. It's sharp but not bright, so it won't actually look that good just at the moment. So I'll need to run it through again now that I've seen the exposure. I tend to slightly underexpose when the ISS is coming over, because with handheld in it, I want to keep the shutter speed as high as I can get away with, so I can get sharp frames. And I was using the camera at it's a 500mm lens with a 2x converter, which makes it 1000, and a 1.4 converter, which makes it 1400mm, and it's a crop sensor. And I was using the cropped section of the crop sensor. So it's rather, you're sort of fighting it, but if you get it right, and the latter half of the video is right, but I'm just going to put some...
Are you doing all of that handheld, Martin?
Oh, yeah. Well,
that's crazy.
The lens has stabilization. The autofocus doesn't work at that level, but the stabilization does. So if you can actually get it in frame and hold it steady enough, the stabilization keeps it within the little crop area in the viewfinder quite nicely. But it's heavy. It works. It's when I came up and showed you the pictures, and if you've looked on me images, you'll see that when it works very well. I've just moved to a mirrorless as well, which I'm going to try tomorrow night and see if the weight reduction helps. But I mean, I can. What's that? I'm getting an error message. Oh, it's okay. I can show you. I don't know if this will actually come across very well with it being dark. Let me just. I'll get it across, and I don't know why I'm transferring it this way. I've got a network. My brain's out of gear. Everything's networked here. I could have sent it onto a drive, but never mind. It's let's do that. Oh, and of course I've just unplugged that as well, so that isn't going to work. My brain is not working good tonight. It definitely isn't working good tonight. So if I get that running, and then I should be able to share my screen if I'm permitted to.
It should be, that should be all right.
Okay, let me just get the video running, and then I'll share the screen. Yeah, you'll get the gist of it. So if I do a right click and go share screen, where do I do it? Oh, here, isn't it? Share screen, and it's that one, and share. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's good.
And you see it's blurred as it starts, and then as I redid the focus,
Wow.
you can see the panels.
Wow, look at that.
That's incredible.
And that's literally just, but it'll be sharper and better when I've got the processing done. But
The fact that you can see the detail on the panels as well.
Yeah. I mean, what I'll do when I'm sort of finished with what I'm doing in terms of getting the each frame sorted, I shall find a run of say 5 or 10 that are similar, and I'll stack them, and they'll be all right. This will be all right, I think. It won't be a bad result.
Martin, that moonshot is absolutely incredible.
It's reasonable, isn't it? It doesn't. Let me just come out of this so I can see what's happening. It doesn't stand detailed looking at, because literally there were only 20-second videos, and I only used the 20% of the frames from those 20-second videos.
Yeah.
And the atmosphere was awful, absolutely awful.
It looks like I'm zooming in, and it looks pretty good.
Some areas don't. Some areas do. If it had a good run, then some areas are not bad, but some areas are appalling.
So does the stacking software select the best images from the movie file? And what software is that, Martin?
Well, both on Registax and AutoStackert. I use AutoStackert 2 because AutoStackert 3 requires uncompressed video, and I don't shoot uncompressed video. It comes off the DSLR as compressed rubbish, basically. So I take, like those, each one of those 12 shots was a 20-second 4K video in MOV file. I convert them to AVR, stick them into AS2, AutoStackert 2, run it through, and there's at the end it says take the best 20% or 30% and stack those. And same with Register. So you can actually say take the best 200 images.
Yeah, it's so crisp and clear. It's brilliant.
It's in areas it's not bad considering how short a time they were done. But when you compare it against some of my better ones, it's lacking. But it's okay. It's not bad. It's not bad. I was fairly pleased with it, considering I sort of rushed it into a bit of a quick one. But that ISS one, when I've done it, run it through a bit more brightening and then a bit of stacking, will be all right. But it just sorry, Martin. No problem.
I was going to ask Pierre how Dara was.
How?
Oh, you're on mute, Pierre.
Yeah, I can see that. Sorry. Yeah, it was good. It was more a historical thing. It was about the NGC catalogue and how it was put together, and stuff about the observatory, which I kind of know from being a kid, and my uncles kind of used to do some stuff there, and because they were amateur astronomers. So it was very interesting from that point of view. So you didn't learn much in terms of astrophotography or anything like that, but it was fantastic, just amazing. Yeah. So and fortunately he was accompanied by 2 people who knew what they were talking about, so that helped.
Good stuff. Worth the money then?
No, it was free. This is a free one tonight.
Right,
so
okay.
You still had to get tickets for it. You had to, but I got that. So I do have a ticket for tomorrow night as well. I've had to pay hard cash for that, so that better be funny. I'm going to be actually writing down the jokes, and they better be good quality ones. So yeah. So this one was free. It was good.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm sorry I missed everything. I've just been out as well trying to catch the ISS, and I'll do something similar to you, Martin, but I just fired off just a load of shots, and I've yet to look at them to see if any of them are in focus, but that's always the challenge. But though what you've just shown us there, that is truly amazing. That is just fantastic. I've got a little time to converter on a 300, so it gets me to 600, so it's, you know, I'm a bit of the way there, but I struggle. That's not really quite enough.
It's not really enough to get a lot of detail with a 300mm, and
yeah,
your front optic isn't going to be enough really, unless you've got a 300-2.8 or something like that to get all the detail. But it's still good fun trying.
Yeah, yeah. I'm still laughing.
Yeah. Well, this is what I say when I do my astronomy. You know, enjoy it. You know, use what you've got. Doesn't matter what level of equipment you've got, because you'll always get a new bit that's better at some point. Use what you got now, enjoy it, then move on to a better bit when you can afford. It's simple as that, really.
Martin, what's your new mirrorless camera? What is that? Is that stabilized as well as your lens?
No. It's a Z50, a cheap one. I decided to dump some old equipment that I'd got that I wasn't using. One of them was a nice lens, a 300-2.8, but a very old one. And I just thought, I'm going to, rather than it just sit in the cupboard, which it has done for 3 years without being used since I bought newer lenses, I just sold it to MPB and got the mirrorless for no money, effectively. I did a straight swap, a lens and a old camera body that I wasn't using, and I got... it was actually quite interesting, because I clicked online to say this is what I'm sending in, and it was going to be a straight swap. I was going to get a Z50 and a 16-55 lens with it. I thought, that's great. No money. That's the sort of movement I like. When they got it, they reckoned I'd underjudged the level of my equipment, and they gave me that plus £300.
Oh, that was all right.
So I came out of that quite happy. So I bought myself a nice 16-35 f2.8 for with the leftovers.
Brilliant. Fantastic.
But yeah, focusing the ISS on those passes is hard. And what I did this pass, because it was hazy, I started taking some pictures and I wasn't convinced I was in focus, so I stopped, zoomed in at one of the images. I saw I wasn't actually in sharp focus, and so I focused again. I actually did it twice as it was passing. So that's why there's some gaps in the video of the frames, and I just shoot bursts, 5 or 10 frames at a time, and then I rest my arms and then move and lock on it again, and 5 or 10, and then I lose it, and that, because it really pulls with the weight of all that to keep it on frame.
Brilliant.
Still cloudy out there here in South Manchester.
Yeah. Right then, I think I'm gonna love you and leave you and do a bit of study.
I think we've pretty much come to the end of the evening, so shall we wrap up now? Is that okay? And we'll have another meeting next month.
Thanks for inviting me. I've enjoyed it.
Thanks for coming, Martin. It's great to see you again. Oh, Martin, are you presenting at the North Cheshire Camera?
Yes, sometime at, I can't remember when it is, October or something like that.
Because I'm a member of that society, and I suggested that you came along to present.
Yes, I'm going to do the introduction to astrophotography. It sounds like they don't have such a long time to talk though, so I'm going to have to cut it quite.
It's usually 2 hours.
Is it? Oh, right.
They have a break in between, so but hopefully we'll be back to physically.
Yes, yes. Because I told them I wasn't interested in doing a Zoom talk, whereas because I'd done a Zoom, I'd been with you. You knew the equipment, you understood how I did things. I was quite happy, but to a photography club that hasn't seen what the equipment looks like, doesn't know what a tracker's like, I thought, I'm not even going to try to do that over Zoom.
I think that'll be at Poynton. That's right. Oh, it'll be great. I'll see you there. That's brilliant. Fantastic.
No problem.
Okay, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Thank you. Thanks again, Andrew. Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers.
Andrew, I'll send you the recording.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Bye-bye then.
Thanks. Bye now.
Bye. Bye.